What's up, you guys? Matt Jablonski here with the Point of Change. Twice in one day. Hopefully you guys don't get sick of me. But I just finished listening to a podcast put together by a friend of mine up north. His name's Tommy Rock. I worked with the Rusk County Youth Council in my hometown. They were the ones that really put everything together for me to come back and speak at my high school and at the surrounding high schools in the area. Since then, Tommy has started his own podcast called Wisconsin Prevail. That's WI Prevail. And that is on, let me check the name of this app that you have to get. Oh boy, I have to back all the way out, huh? Okay, I want to make sure I get you guys all the information here for this. Podbean, Podbean. Podbean is the app. I put a link to the podcast in the description of this video if anyone is interested in hearing it in its entirety. I did the first podcast with Tommy. He asked me to be his first guest on it's called The Power of Prevention. He asked me to be his first guest, so I did this podcast with him a few months ago. But I just got sent a link to his second episode of his podcast. Let me get back into it here. And his second episode of this podcast, he's talking to the chief of police in my hometown area, Ladysmith, Wisconsin. Was his second guest on The Power of Prevention. Chief of police, his name is Kevin Julien in Ladysmith. I'm a little taken aback, guys. This hit me right in the heart to see this and to hear this, to listen to this podcast. And if I have, like I said, there's a link in the description of this video over to the podcast, but I'd like to play just a couple sections of it for you now, if you guys would like to listen to this was really nice. Okay. Like I was talked about quite a bit in this podcast on good things. Some good information in this whole thing. If you want to listen to the whole podcast, I really recommend listening to it. But listening to it, and all of a sudden I continuously am hearing my name. And so I'd like to play just a couple sections. This first section is about 1.5 minutes long. They're just talking about the methamphetamine use in my hometown area here.
There's just so much meth out there.
Yeah.
Now we're overrun with it. I think right now, today, and I say this, if you would ask me this a year ago, I'd say the same thing. I think today there's more methamphetamine users than there ever has been in the city of Ladysmith and Rusk County.
Really?
I think tomorrow, if you ask me, I'd say today is
There's more.
There's more.
Do you? Wow. That's kind of crazy to think about. Do you think that is only going to go up from here? Is that going to go down? What's it like?
I think methamphetamine is such a powerful drug. And I know you had talked to Matty Jablonski, I think, in one of your other sections. I think he would agree with me 100%.
Yep.
It's got such a hold on a person.
Mm-hmm.
It's so highly abused that you get out there, the wrong crowd, and you may use marijuana, and you use marijuana, and use some pills, and
can you guys hear it?
Meth. Like they say, it really can be a one-time deal, and then you're sucked into it. I've had a lot of people tell me that.
Yeah. No, I think you would agree with that. We talked about that a little bit. He actually enlightened me to something that I'd never heard of before. And people that inject can become addicted to the act of injecting.
Oh, sure.
And they will just inject water into themselves if they don't have any drugs at the moment, because that just gives them a relief. That dependency is a really strong, crazy thing. Well, you answered a ton of my questions there. But
okay, so that was just they just mentioned me, and I was like, oh, well, that was nice. But then keep listening here, and this part hits me in the heart. This is a little bit of a longer section here. 20 minutes, 17 seconds, approximately, right around there. Okay.
Something that we're working on. What should we, as myself as being in prevention, our agency, our community, our schools, our police department, do you think would be the best prevention for drugs and or alcohol?
Yeah, so like as far as like the drug side of it, like, and I'm going to talk about methamphetamine because that's what I always talk about when asked. I think what we have been doing is what we have to do to try to help, and that is, I have went kind of full on board with people, such as Matty Jablonski, coming to their local community where they grew up, talk about how his life was, while prior to meth, and then during meth, and now after meth, with him being in recovery. And I think seeing that person, listen, I remember Matty Jablonski. I arrested him a few times. I remember how he was. And now I talked to him numerous times since, while he's in recovery, and I've had conversations with him. And I think people seeing him the way he is now, knowing what he was before, maybe that gives some people, even if you can get a couple people to give them hope and to try to get them in the right path to recovery. And Matty can talk about this way better than I can because he's done his research, he's educated on it. But I can just tell you what I've seen, like I've heard people after they went and saw him, and even if he gave one person out of that group of 35, 40, 50 people in that town hall meeting or a podcast, if he gave one of those people hope, I tell you what, that's he won. He won at the end of the day. Even one person. Drug court. We have a Russ County drug court. I was on the panel for that. I've been kind of off now because of COVID-related issues and my own personal child care issues. So, if we can get a few people through that program and take them from abuser to recovery and try to keep them in recovery, even if we can fix a couple of them, I maybe fix is probably not the best word. Maybe Matty would say that's not the right word, but in my opinion, you get somebody that's a junkie to recovery, I think really fix them. That's my opinion, of course, but.
There's still more. I'm going to play more, but just hearing the chief of police say, you get somebody through that and it might fix them, and then pausing and saying, well, maybe Matty would say that's not the right words. Like that just made me like, what? Like the whole thing, this whole interview with Kevin just hit me in the heart. It really does. But a few more minutes to this section. And then he even he talked about me in his closing remarks on this discussion. He talked about me again, and I'll play that. Like I said, if anybody's interested in listening to this full podcast, there is a link in the description. Go over there and follow this podcast. I believe you have to download an app to listen to it, but go ahead and follow The Power of Prevention. That's Tommy Rock. He's an awesome guy.
Yeah. Then tell me if you agree with this, because it's funny that I ended up where I am now, because prevention was never what I saw myself doing. I had a political science degree. I wanted to be a police officer. I've worked in fire and EMS for about 8 years now, and
that happens a couple more times too.
Matt, and I didn't know him prior, but his recovery has been really helpful for me, because you other police officers, firefighters, when you deal with the same person over and over and over again, doing the same thing that they know is bad for them, they know is making problems in the community, they know is, all these different things, you get burnt out. Right? I hear about it.
I'll pause again quick, because it's not actually getting burnt out. That's called compassion fatigue, and it happens to doctors, it happens to EMT people, it happens to people like me that work with recovering addicts. When you see the same people making the same mistakes, you get it feels like burnt out. It feels like you're burnt out. It's actually called compassion fatigue, where you're tired of giving a shit, and it kind of sucks, but it is something that you can work through. It is manageable to work on that compassion fatigue and continue to caring work that we do. But anyways, back to the podcast here. Just a few more minutes here.
From people in law enforcement, I see it like, we get a 911 call, my pager goes off, and I'm like, oh, that address again,
Right.
But to see that person come out the other end is inspiring for me, because unfortunately we don't see it all that often. And actually seeing that, it kind of changed my attitude and how I react to those types of things.
Right.
Where, now I get that call, it's like, okay, this is a person that needs help, not, I don't roll my eyes anymore and go, oh, great, we have to go there again,
Right.
Like, this is an actual person underneath what they have going on.
Right.
So that's been really, that was my big takeaway from Matt's speech. That's something I really liked, for sure.
Yeah, and it is hard. It is hard doing a job like I've done for 16 years and dealing with that same person or group of people. But then, like those people like Maddie and I guess I don't want to name a lot of names, but I know 2 or 3 others in our community that successfully went through drug court, and they know who they are.
Yeah.
They're outstanding people. They were outstanding people, but they had this methamphetamine hanging over their head, and they couldn't kick it. Yeah. Were they criminals? I would say they weren't even criminals. They were methamphetamine abusers.
Yeah.
Who did maybe some stupid stuff here and there. But when I see those people, and I see one quite frequently, every time I see him, I have a conversation with him, ask him how he's doing. He's in charge of the, I think he's been lately in charge of the local NAA meetings.
Yeah.
And he talks to me about all the stuff he's doing and his great job that he's got now. That's great. I mean, that gives me hope. So people like Maddie, people like him, and people like a couple others that I mentioned, they just give me hope that maybe I can someday help somebody in that position and get them back to where they need to be.
Yeah.
That whole section right there hits me right in the heart, man, to hear that, to hear that they've learned something from me and they got a little hope out of me, and that the chief of police now has a different way of thinking about addicts and stuff. Like, that's crazy. So if you're out there and you're pushing through recovery and you don't think you're making a difference, or whatever you are, just by being here, we're helping people understand. We're helping people see that, we're not monsters. And I will leave you on this last little part. This is Kevin's closing remarks on everything they were talked about with. This is about a half-hour podcast, a little more than a half hour. I'm just giving you guys a few minutes out of it of some of the things that that they were talking about, myself in it, and yeah. So here, I'll finish off. This is his closing remarks on the thoughts.
I asked that before, because before when we talked about doing the drug trends presentation, I did them for Julie Beaver for, I don't know, 6-7 years. And I kind of got away from that, just because my positions changed, and I let the people that were really working on the drug investigations to take over in that aspect. I think that just the community has to stay unified and try to do the best that we can with methamphetamine or alcohol or whatever drug it is, and work together and try to help those people in need, like the Maddie Jablonskis of the world, instead of putting them down. And I think Maddie's actually talked about this is, if he went into a place in town or around the county, people looked at him and, oh, he's that meth user.
There's that stigma there,
They have a status.
Yeah.
Well, little that they knew, he was working on road to recovery.
Bettering himself and helping other people, yep.
So don't put people down and don't judge just because of their past. And I know he's talked about a lot about that. Don't judge by somebody by the way their past was. We all have shaky pasts, I think as a community, if we come together, we can try to battle it. And keep community and law enforcement together as one, and the communication together. So that's my only words of wisdom, is not. Here
you have it. What he said there at the end about the part of not judging other people and stuff. What I said when I went up there last fall or last spring, I went up north to speak to medical professionals and law enforcement in the area. And And the one thing that I said was just to keep in mind, you know, that you guys in your line of work, working as judges and as police officers and EMT, and you're on the front lines and you're going to see us on our worst day. So try your best not to judge us on our worst day. Because by the time the EMTs are there for the addicts, by the time the cop is there for the addict, we're at the end of our rope and we're giving up, you know. So it's unfortunate the picture that they get painted of us, but we're not that way. We're not monsters. We're people too. We're just having hard times, and we maybe have learned the wrong way on how to deal with things, and we just took it too far, you know. But yeah, the link in the description of this video over to that podcast if anybody's interested in listening to the whole thing. There's also a podcast over there that I did with him, his first podcast. He had me as his guest, so if you'd like to listen to that, you're more than welcome. I'd love to have you guys check out Tommy's page. Yeah, I just really wanted to share that. It's cool to hear the chief of police in my hometown talking about me that way. That's pretty awesome to hear. It, you know, lets me know I'm doing something over here, doing something, making a difference in somebody's life. And that's what it's all about right there, changing people's perspective of us and just getting this world to think differently about it, about recovering addicts. And I'd like to add to that at the end of there, when he said the Matty Jablonskis in the world, that really hit me. That really hit me when he said, you know, the Matty Jablonskis out there in this world. Because, I mean, my name is that in my hometown area anyways. My name has become that synonymous with a motivational speaker for addiction prevention and for recovery. Because that's what he was talking about there when he said he was, you know, my hat's off to the Matty Jablonskis out there. What he was saying was the people in recovery who are pushing for other people, you know, trying to help others too. And that's just kind of cool to hear that my name is synonymous with such things when for so long in my life, my name was synonymous with methamphetamine and criminal activity. That's what my name was synonymous with. So to hear the mood change on how they talk about me, it's just beautiful up there. Thank you guys for tuning in for a minute. I just wanted to share that with you, and I'll let you guys go back to your days. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll see you guys tomorrow for Toothless Tuesday. Until then, stay happy, stay healthy, and stay clean.